It's block 856496. Hope you're doing all okay. It's the one and only Art of Freedom here every Monday, getting the stories behind the artists, collectors, gallerists, curators, and art fans in our space in this incredible culture we have as Bitcoin art. My name is Rebel Money, and I'm joined as forever with my co-host Florencia. How you doing, Flo?
Hey Rebel, I'm doing very good. You?
Yeah, I'm good. The sun is shining here in Wales. It's a lovely evening. I've got a cup of tea, obviously, as British as it kind of gets. And it's just wonderful to hang out with artists and the art crew. I guess it's this community we have every Monday night, and blessed that we're all here and we're all come together to celebrate Bitcoin art. What have you been up to this week, Flo?
I'm just chilling. I came to visit my sister. She lives in another city, so I'm like near the nature, touching grass, and yeah, in a very different mood after all the conferences and all of that. And you?
Yeah, I've about de-stressed now. I think I've caught up on my sleep. I've kind of got rid of all the illnesses that I had from it, and yeah, back in the studio, back creating more art and trying new methods, and just excited for whatever the next time I'm gonna put some art out is. So yeah, really, really cool. Thanks. So without further ado, I think we should announce our guest this week. And yeah, so at the start of every single Art of Freedom episode, you hear me shouting out the block height. And what normally happens is I press play for the spaces, put on the microphone on mute, and then make sure our guest is obviously there. Then I head over to timechaincalendar.com, which you should all go to, and we will hopefully will have a go in a minute. And then I check that the block height there, it is the number one place to explore the time chain calendar. And I'm pleased to say, ladies and gentlemen, this evening we do have the creator of Time Chain Calendar here with us. TC, how are you doing, my friend?
I am so stoked to be here today. As Flo mentioned, I'm still, dust settling vibes after the Nashville conference. That was really an incredible experience. It was so cool to meet you, Rebel, and to meet Flo. I actually think I might have met Flo one other time previously last year. I went to a lot of conferences, and this time around, it kind of was a little bit more uh, sort of contextually really hitting home just because of sort of the activity on the gallery that I've been building on Timechain Calendar and the sort of momentum building around that. I feel just honored that I've kind of gotten a chance to interact with and get to know several really amazing artists in the Bitcoin art space. So all of that together, big takeaway is just absolutely uplifting vibes and seeing all the art there in Nashville this year. It was just really powerful, and it was especially great to meet both of you guys. So very happy to be here today. Thanks.
We're extremely humbled to have you here on the show, and it was fantastic to meet you in person, to have a chat. And it's one thing, kind of talking over on a messenger or whatever it might be, but until you actually get in front of someone, have a talk. I believe we chatted for 20, 30 minutes, I think it was, in the gallery, around art, around some of the interesting topics that we're going to go in to this evening around time in Bitcoin. I think that's when you get the true perspective, and I just I've been meaning to get you on the show for ages because the way you frame Bitcoin art is wonderful. It's just truly great. It's a really unique experience for anyone to go out and experience Bitcoin art, and as it's kind of like you're using Bitcoin as the art gallery itself. So I want to know, to start with, TC, where did this concept come up? Where did you get this concept of the time chain calendar from?
Well, I have been in Bitcoin since about 2017. I consider my transition to really being a Bitcoin maximalist in the year 2020. I did, like many people, used to trade shitcoins and all these kind of things in prior years, but really kind of fell down the rabbit hole properly in 2020. And I'm a front end developer, which means I build websites, web applications. I've been doing that for about 14, 15 years and working in the tech industry. And so I naturally feel like I gravitated towards some of these websites and other sort of tools that aid in sort of seeing Bitcoin. And there's several that I actually shout out on my little info section in the Timechain Calendar site as being highly inspirational to me, and that includes CoinKite's block clock, the physical hardware that shows you the block height, and it updates as the network progresses. Clark Moody's dashboard, if you're not aware, that's one of the most OG Bitcoin dashboards out there. Of course, I couldn't omit mempool.space, which is really icons in the whole field of trying to visualize Bitcoin and bring information to people in that format. So, and there's several others, but basically I as a web developer, I really keyed in on some of these resources, especially the websites. And as I learned more about Bitcoin and I wanted to kind of also build something myself, being that I actually am a software developer, it kind of was a natural thing. I started thinking about my own understanding of Bitcoin and wanting to sort of realize that. And through, the front end web, which is my skill set, I'm able to actually, bring my vision into reality. So that's sort of the genesis of Timechain Calendar, is thinking about things from that point of view. And literally one day I just sketched it out. I drew the block height on a piece of paper and drew circles around it and started kind of developing the design. I don't consider myself a designer. That's not my background. But a funny thing about doing front end web is that you're constantly running into issues of design, and especially the long tenure that I had at the first place that I was doing web development many years ago. I was working side by side with a couple of really talented and very opinionated designers, and I feel like I kind of through osmosis gained just enough to do some damage with design, and that's basically been the whole actual like visual manifestation of Timechain Calendar, has been me just searching for how I can visualize these concepts of Bitcoin. So yeah, that's basically the origin story.
I think that's so creative in itself, and it's so similar to some of the process I've seen in the arts. It's like how do you present an image, or you give visualization to something that's so abstract as Bitcoin itself. And it's very interesting to me that you having this background, like coming from this developer angle. Um, what you did is it's so beautiful and so creative, and yeah, I mean, never know who is like getting like an influence in our work and what we do. You say maybe you have worked with many designers, or maybe you just have this in you. um, but I think it's very interesting that like you had this very creative perspective. uh, you had to present, like, create an image to present these abstract concepts, and also you thought of doing an art gallery, because that was also very innovative. Like you mentioned, there have been some places where you can see um the block height, and people trying to visualize that. But you also immediately thought of the people who are doing this in these other ways, like giving image to Bitcoin. And I would love to hear more about that. Like, how did you thought of that, or what's your perspective?
Yeah, the art gallery came about incredibly organically as far as all of these different things happening sort of in parallel. So I built Timechain Calendar. The very first version of it only had two circles. It had the orange circle, which is the blocks to the halving, which is a 4-year cycle, and the red circle, which is the blocks to the difficulty adjustment, and then you have the block height in the middle. And so one of the very first things that I settled on when I was originally building the first prototype was that slider at the bottom of the interface, where if you grab that handle and you start sliding it to the left, the halving circle starts winding backwards. And so what ended up coming of this is an interface where you can basically go through the entire time chain of Bitcoin. You can just in the palm of your hand on mobile. It's really nice because it's so responsive on a phone, but also on desktop. You can just fly through this history of blocks, stop on any block you want, and it loads. And then there's a couple other ways you can search through the blocks. You can do a date search, or you can actually type in a block height and jump to it. What I'm getting at here is that the UI that I built, the application ends up having this space that's created for this kind of content because I sort of developed a way to kind of represent each block in the entire chain through the same interface. And you'll notice when you go backwards through the time chain in the app, a lot of the live data disappears because it's not relevant to the older blocks. And this is where that sort of organic thing came out of. I realized, I've got this space on the screen where I could put something. And very early on in this project, I started thinking about what could I put on these blocks. This touches on my own philosophy about Bitcoin, which is that we're looking at a profound new aspect of human timekeeping. And as I thought about it more through time and talking to a lot of people, I really did realize it's more like a calendar than a clock. And that's what the Timechain Calendar is visualizing, is these sort of nested time frames. Even just the red and the orange circle, you're talking about a 2-week cycle for the difficulty adjustment, nested inside of the 4-year cycle for the halving. And so from that point of view, I really do look at Bitcoin as an incredible new sort of timekeeping paradigm for the human race. And so from that point of view, isn't each block sort of a very unique, special moment? And this is where I start getting some, hairs on my neck standing up, is think about the fact that when a block happens, that's a moment that everyone on the planet experiences simultaneously, because we have a lot of other human experiences that we celebrate globally, and they're sort of fractured because they happen in different time zones. Think of New Year's Eve, right? You get this rolling time zone effect across the globe as each respective time zone reaches midnight and everyone celebrates, but it's not actually unified. And then think about Bitcoin. We had the halving earlier this year, and think about every Bitcoiner fixated on when's this block happening, and that moment in time is shared between the entire global race. So it's really a profound thing to me, just as far as we're seeing I see this aspect of Bitcoin's time chain as a calendar. And that's really where the name of the project comes from. Now imagine, okay, on every single block, this is a unique moment shared amongst all humans. And so now anything that occurred on that block could be really sort of made more special or given more kind of that time chain context around it. One of the first things I ever thought of was the birth of my child as a block height instead of just a date. And because we have 144 blocks per day on average, a block height is a much more specific reference of time than a day. And we always think about, oh, what's your birthday? And that's, again, this is a day that, depending on where someone is on the planet, it might actually be a different day compared to where you are. Meanwhile, these block heights are experienced in synchronicity between us. So to me, that's long-winded way of saying, the interface that I built inherently gives the user access to all these different blocks, and putting some art there was one of the first use cases that just felt right. I believe Madex was the first guy that I put on there. I really feel lucky. I've met so many amazing Bitcoin artists, and I've become good friends with several of them just from seeing people repeatedly at different conferences and events. And early on, I kind of threw out there, to Madex. I said, "Hey, give me some, give me some JPEGs, give me some images of some of your art, and I just need to know what block height you completed the art on, and we'll put them on the interface." And then it was just an iterative process to design how the gallery functions. There's been some major updates to that recently that are really cool. But yeah, I mean, that's really how the gallery came together, was just a combination of my philosophy of Bitcoin as a calendar and the interface that I created that naturally gives you this space and access to these different moments that make up the entire time chain. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Definitely does, and it's such a unique way of displaying art, because in effect it is the Bitcoin gallery of the internet. And actually, what I'd really like to do, TC, right now, is for everyone who's listening to actually go to timechaincalendar.com and have a look at it. And in fact, if you could, because I think you're kind of understating what you've done with the front end design there, because I think the actual design is a work of art in itself. I'm sat here and I'm loving the just the with my t-shirt on, which I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for giving it to me. Treasured it. It's and I'm wearing it right now. But the actual simplicity in the orange and red circles, but then obviously the detail within those as well. So I was wondering if you could just take us through kind of the the kind of take us a quick tour of actually how the calendar works, and the philosophy behind the data points as well, which is what we've had a question from Scarcifiable, who's asked about that. So if we all head over to keep your Twitter on, but if you head over to timechaincalendar.com, and then here we go, straight from the creator's mouth himself, if you could just give us a quick tour of how it all works and how we should operate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Let's do a quick little rundown. So, if you pull it up on a phone, you're going to see the sort of vertically oriented layout where the circles are on top of all this extra data. If you're on a desktop, typically the extra data is to the right in sort of a sidebar area. But let's start with those circles. As I mentioned before, we're talking about a nested series of time frames. So if you're on a large enough screen, you're going to see this little circle on the inside below the block height that says last block. Right now, it says 24 minutes ago. We've been having really slow blocks because we had a 10.5% difficulty increase last time. So, but this little circle on the inside functions as a timer. It's counting seconds since the last block. So you see a readout of minutes and seconds. If a block drags on long enough, you'll see it, go over an hour. And what happens is the little circle is progressing with a sort of update to the color of the circle. And as it loops through 10-minute cycles in that little circle, the color changes to sort of visually communicate this sort of anxious expectation of the next block. We talk about a block in Bitcoin takes 10 minutes all the time, but the truth is that nobody has any idea when the next block is coming exactly. So we have this expectation of 10 minutes. This little timer on the middle is kind of showing you how long it's actually been. And then you see around the interface on the inside, there's this circle that has these little tiny squares that go all around it. On mobile, you might just it might just look like dots because the UI gets quite small. But what this is actually pretty cool. This is a visualization of the last 24 hours of blocks. So you can see visually represented that randomness, the fact that we talk about 10-minute blocks, but boy, they are not evenly spaced out by 10 minutes. They are all over the place. You'll get blocks within seconds of one another, and other times it can be over 2 hours for a block to come. And I visualized that by giving you this rolling 24 hours where you look at this any time of day and it's showing you the distribution of those last 24 hours of blocks with those little squares around the circle. Then you've got the red circle outside of that, which is, as I mentioned, the 2-week difficulty adjustment cycle. So that's 2016 blocks. And that is the difficulty adjustment cycle, which impacts the pace of blocks. Because if blocks come in too fast, the difficulty has to go up. And if blocks come in too slow, the difficulty has to go down. This is the difficulty adjustment, one of the most powerful and important mechanisms in Bitcoin. And it's not really fully understood by everyone, but you should really just understand it as, this is what controls the pace of these blocks. So despite the fact that we see a hash rate that's exponentially higher today than it was 15 years ago when Bitcoin started, the blocks are still coming in very close to 10 minutes because of the difficulty adjustment, which means that Bitcoin will, in fact, be distributed over more than 100 years. This is what makes sure that this is a multi-generational distribution of Bitcoin, is this difficulty adjustment. Without it, all the Bitcoin would have been mined already because we've had such a huge increase in people participating in mining over 15 years. Maybe all 21 million would have been mined in the first couple of years if we didn't have this difficulty adjustment mechanism. So that's why the red circle's there. It's very important. And you can see it's about the 10 o'clock position, the indicator on the red circle. We're going to have a difficulty adjustment in about 2 days. So keep an eye out there. The orange circle outside of that is the halving. And that's 210,000 blocks, which equates to about 4 years. So we just had a halving back in April. And you can see that the indicator on that circle is just about the 1 o'clock position. It's going to take another 3, almost 4 years for that to go all the way around. And the last circle on the outside, it's sort of dark orange, very thin, and that's the supply percentage issuance visualized. You'll notice on that circle 2 important things. One is that it's not completely all the way around. There's a little dashed portion there, and that's the remaining supply that's yet to be issued. In the little upper left-hand corner, there's a supply area. It shows we've issued 93.99% of Bitcoin's supply, almost 94%. So there's hardly 6% of the supply of 21 million left to be issued. And that's visualized by that circle not being complete. And you'll also notice little tiny notches on that circle that are placed where the halvings occur. And this is a really cool visualization. If you notice, the first notch on that outer circle is all the way at the bottom, the 6 o'clock position on that circle, which means that half of the Bitcoin supply was issued in the very first epoch. Now, if you grab the little slider at the bottom and you start moving it to the left, you'll see that halving circle indicator rotate back. You'll see the block height tick backwards in the middle, but you'll also see that supply circle rolling back. And so this is a really cool little visualization, a little tool to kind of cement in your mind the relationship between the halving cycles and the supply issuance of Bitcoin. So right here, just in those circles in that main interface, I think there's a lot of potential learning tools here, some opportunities for people to get familiar with some of the really important concepts of Bitcoin in an interactive and visual way. And, the rest of the information on the site is a bunch of extra data. We've got the fees on the right and block production metrics and information about the state of the chain, how many UTXOs there are at the moment, and the total disk size. And a lot of great information, but just those main circles in the main interface is really the calendar aspect of this project. And just in those circles, we've got 5 levels of time frames: a 10-minute block time, 24 hours of blocks outside of that, 2 weeks of the difficulty adjustment outside of that, 4 years of the halving cycle outside of that, and right now 15 and a half years and counting of the total supply issuance. So that's basically the interface. And what do you think?
It's not bad, mate. It's actually pretty incredible, and how you've put that together visually is amazing. I think this is the hardest thing. Flo touched upon it earlier. How do we, as artists, particularly visual artists, how do we visualize Bitcoin? And it's because it's such an abstract concept. I think you've just done it really beautifully in this interface there, and you can scrub back and forth. It also makes you appreciate how the halving, etc., how much supply is left compared to what's gone. So I guess my next question to you, if Bitcoin is kind of an evolution in, let's say, the way we operate on a monetary policy way, is Bitcoin also a way in how we think about time? And is this an evolution in terms of the calendar, as we, the 12 months, 365 days of the year, as we've seen? Is this the next stage for the kind of human race to measure time?
Yeah, I love that question, and it's got a kind of funny answer from me, which is it's a different paradigm in so many ways. If you think about typical calendars, you have this nested time frame thing happening too. You've got days of the week, and then you've got weeks within a month, and you have months within a year. And these things are meant to represent the sort of physical movement of the Earth relative to the sun. A day is basically one rotation of the Earth. A year is one orbit around the sun. And so, that paradigm has basically attempted to capture that and convey it forward in order to provide some predictability. We just hit a block. I wonder if you guys saw that. But in Bitcoin, we have a totally different kind of experience of time, which is that the past is immutable. So every block that's occurred in Bitcoin is time stamped, put into sequence with all the blocks in the chain, and that is essentially unchangeable, especially as blocks become buried in subsequent blocks. Those events and those timestamps are now immutable in the chain. And so that's a very powerful reflection on time past. And yet, the future block, the next block, it's been a minute and a half since the last block. We don't know if the next block's going to happen in 1 second or if it's going to take another hour. There's an unpredictable, deterministic nature to the future. And so there's a paradox there, as there is in so many places with Bitcoin, immutable past and totally unpredictable future. And yet, when you zoom out, this timekeeping method is remarkably reliable as far as being close to 10 minutes on average. So right there, just in the timing of the blocks and a realization of the nature of the past blocks in the chain versus the blocks that are yet to come, I think there really is a powerful timekeeping paradigm there. It's just very different. It has to embrace this idea of unpredictability going forward, and it has to embrace this idea of being zoomed out and having a low time preference and being patient and a long-term outlook. And then it functions beautifully as a calendar. Not sure you could necessarily schedule your meetings based on a future block quite as easily. That randomness will surprise you. But as far as sort of long outlook and long time frames, it's pretty powerful.
Hey, I want to remember everyone who is listening that this is an open conversation. So if you want to join and ask questions for TC, just click on your mic and we'll, yeah, we'll let you ask. And also I saw a question from Frederick. So he's wondering how can someone submit their work for the gallery? Yeah, and how do you usually handle that?
Yeah. So this is something that's not formalized, and it's been an evolution in and of itself. The first few artists that I added were just people that I already kind of was associated with, and then I remember the first time I kind of just reached out and like, cold call, just DM'd someone and said, "Hey, I have a gallery. Would you mind if I put some of your work there?" Bitcoin Apex Art was one of those guys. I was one of the first people that I reached out to, and I said, "Your work is just beautiful, and I'd love to put a few pieces there." And then he just came back with like I think 20 pieces or something. He was really excited to participate. That's kind of how it's gone, and I realize at this point this is sort of a curated thing, curated by me. I mean, there's something like 27 artists and authors in there now. They're not all just visual art. Some of it is literature. I've got Der Gigi and Knut Svanholm are in the gallery, where their writings are placed on the blocks where those things were published. And I've got a couple video artists. I have Tip NZ, the musician who does these incredible videos and songs about Bitcoin, and then also Real Richard, who does the same kind of genre. So I've got both of them in the gallery, and they basically have videos embedded in there. And so the gallery's taken on a life of its own. I have a really diverse range of different kind of artistic approaches. There's even a few artists in there that have done, purely digital mediums, but overall, all of it is curated by me. And my intention is to try to bring art in that really speaks to Bitcoin. Maybe this is a good time for me to just kind of pivot into that topic. For me, Bitcoin art is really powerful because it's kind of, in my mind, it's the higher form of what we see all the time on social media, which are these memes about Bitcoin in the world. I honestly believe every single idea in Bitcoin you first encounter as a new Bitcoiner, you encounter these things as memes, because these ideas get complex. There's a lot to learn. Bitcoin is sophisticated, and yet at the same time, aspects of it are very simple. And I feel like when we start in Bitcoin, we consume these ideas in very simple terms, and then as time goes on, you learn more, you get more nuance, and you may even come to the point where you disprove a certain meme or a certain simple way of explaining something, and replace it with a more nuanced, complex kind of idea. But that's at the heart of Bitcoin art to me, is that you're talking about ideas that make up this protocol, because that's fundamentally what it is at the end of the day. The technology is really an incredibly powerful set of ideas, and this is what art can elevate. Art can embody those ideas. Art can put these things in front of someone's eyes who maybe is disarmed of their biases. Maybe they're not sitting there having an analytical, intellectual debate, but rather appreciating the beauty of a crafted thing. And there's ideas about Bitcoin that get communicated so effectively through Bitcoin art. So to me, it's just this higher form of communicating Bitcoin ideas. So I try to curate the gallery to include art that I feel is doing that, and I can't help being opinionated about that. And so I've definitely had a few times people reach out to me and I kind of decline. And I've also had times when I've reached out to other artists and they've declined to be put into the gallery. So it's just one of these things that over time um, will sort itself out one way or another. I don't think I can manage to put everyone who wants to be there in there, but I am absolutely open to seeing new material. I've absolutely been blown away by the Bitcoin art these days. Through curating this gallery, I've learned about so many amazing Bitcoin artists that I didn't even know of a year or more ago. So to me, this is a process of discovery for me as far as becoming familiar with who's out there and what they're doing. And the gallery is it's not got a moat around it. People just need to reach out to me. So just tag me in a post, um, and we can start a little chat in DMs, and I'm more than happy to take a look at anyone's stuff. But just do realize it's something that I'm particularly proud of, the sort of level of caliber of the participants in there so far, and I'd like to try to keep it that way if possible. And as my gallery, I'm gonna I'm gonna curate it. But please, if somebody's interested in submitting some work, don't hesitate.
Thanks, TC, and let's say I was humbled to receive a message from you to ask to be included in the gallery and among some of the incredible artists that you have in there. So and I think you nailed it. Well, in terms of what we believe here on the Art of Freedom, we would say this, but we believe Bitcoin art is just the one of the best ways to tell the Bitcoin story throughout the time, because through art we get an accurate historical kind of representation of not just kind of the facts of the day as the day and how Bitcoin was on that day, or the price, but also the feeling, the emotion behind what we were feeling at the time. Was it fear, optimism, hope? Just looking at, for instance, Florencia's pieces where you've got Bitcoin is hope. You can just see at the time how we were trying to approach Bitcoin, and where we were going with it. Obviously, you look further back in terms of the Cassatius coins. Perhaps people are looking at more in just terms of just a monetary exchange there, as a way of well, just storing value or sending value. But it's become more than that over time, and as such, the art has evolved with Bitcoin. Or you could look at it the other way, where the art has kind of been evolved by Bitcoin. It's kind of this relationship that is hard. It's hard to get away from, but it's the way of kind of crystallizing and condensing those ideas that you said, these memes. So I'm just wondering, where how you perceive now, where are you at in Bitcoin in terms of where we're at now? We're at the start. Are we on this incredible, hopeful journey? Where are we, and what's your kind of vision for the future with Bitcoin?
Well, I find that as time goes on, I'm steadily learning more about Bitcoin. As I said before, the nature of the Timechain Calendar project is one where I get to, you know, sort of wrestle with the concepts and come to terms with how things all fit together. And it's a very powerful process. I've found that there's a lot of self improvement, I think, that comes naturally out of Bitcoin. And no surprise, I've ended up this last year or so in a massive self improvement mode, trying to, you know, exude proof of work in all aspects of my life. Um, if I'm hopeful and optimistic, I imagine most people who are in Bitcoin longer than a year or so, start noticing these things happening, that you actually change the way you live in several ways, that you seek more truth, you are intolerant of lies and deceit, you are naturally brought attention to, you know, your health and your relationships and what are you doing in life, your path forward, and that if you actually bring the right attention and proof of work to all those things, you can make improvements everywhere. Now, if everyone on the planet started doing that, boy, we'd have a very different society. So, you know, this is basically what I think of when I think of the future with Bitcoin is there's a battle out there for truth. There's a battle out there for proof of work. And it seems like so many, we call them normies. It's kind of a derogatory term, but so many normies are so far in their perception from, you know, realizing the real state of things and seeing better ways forward. But, you know, the hope is basically Bitcoin will continue to integrate in more and more aspects of society, and that as people come into contact with it over time, they improve their lives in these ways. And uh, you know, maybe collectively that could lead to a better society in the future. I sure hope so.
I sure hope so too. I think definitely, speaking personally as an artist, and I mentioned this before, is my background is in kind of street art and graffiti, and everyone's got to start somewhere, and everyone's got to, uh, and I encourage people as well, do a scribble, do something. It's probably not going to be great, but that's wonderful. You've started, and then as you get more into it, improve. But as I've kind of come into contact with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin art community in particular, it's really pushed me on as an individual in terms of my artistic skill, definitely, but also my outlook on life as well, and how I see things in the future now, and then that then feeds back into the art then as well. So it's kind of this loop. I mean, flow. I mean, we discussed this on some previous shows where um, perhaps in the future well, but I think we both share the opinion that we didn't really want to uh, have children and put them into the world. But with Bitcoin, there's been a lot more hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm. It's something that I think we have talked about it. It's like you can see it in our generation with an army friends, and I see it today even. There's and actually when you are in that in that position in that perspective, it really makes sense like that world because they how everything is like into a very bad direction, but they don't find a solution. They haven't find how to escape that. And once you discover Bitcoin and all that can bring, and yeah, how it can help you fight all of this stuff, it really gives you so much hope. I read someone say that hope is stupid the other day because I was posting about one of the pieces I made that's Bitcoin is hope. And so like we don't need hope. Hope is stupid. I think hope is fuel because hope can be, of course, as everything can be linked to something like real. You can have hope because you only have hope and you cannot explain it, or you can explain it. I feel like with Bitcoin, there is ground for that hope, and yeah, it really has changed my perspective in so many aspects, and I'm grateful for it. And I think that's also why I feel like I have to do the Bitcoin art, is because as we talked the other day with Rebel, it's like you wanna be, people need some touch points to like kind of go into Bitcoin to discover Bitcoin, to learn about it, and you want to help them get one of those touch points, like maybe I can help someone discover this. I cannot give you the answer. I cannot tell you, oh, hey, this is how you survive. But if I can help you discover it, I want to do it because I really love humans and I think we can be good, and I think we can, as I said, like now I have hope in humanity.
Uh-oh, do we lose Flo?
I think we lost Flo mid sentence then, and she was just getting into a, if you pardon the pun, flow as well. So
Yeah, I love what she was saying.
yeah,
Um, well, you know, speaking of Flo, I'm really excited. Uh, Flo had only one piece of art in my gallery until just a few days ago, and there's now, I hope it's close to, anyways, almost an entire portfolio of Flo's Bitcoin art. I added some nice little tools to the gallery. So if you click the gallery button, or if you go to timechaincalendar.com/gallery, you'll arrive at the gallery, which is at the moment a sort of little pop-up window. And at the top, there's a filter, and you can just go right to a particular artist. So if you click on Flo, you'll see all these pieces that she provided me to add to the gallery. And it's really wonderful to see sort of the evolution of her own style. And you see the art as it traverses the different block heights. Another thing you can do is you can also click on the sort drop down there, and there's another whole mode, which is looking at the gallery by block. So you can set it to ascending blocks or descending blocks filtered by an artist, or you can click on all in the filter, and then you see the entire gallery organized by block height. So you get kind of more of a mix of, um, different artists there. And it's really kind of a fun way to sort of explore what's going on. I see so many people down in the audience that I've had the pleasure of adding to this gallery. I just added Marcus Connor recently. It was really awesome meeting him. And I also just added Gareth and his incredible jewelry. That's a whole new sort of genre that was added. And, just, not, I feel honored I got one of your paintings, physical paintings or originals up on my wall that I look at every day for inspiration. Just a lot of this stuff is really powerful. It's snowballed for me as an experience managing this gallery and developing it. But I feel like there's something really incredible here that's got a whole nother potential that's not entirely known yet. Because I think that's kind of the power of these conferences, is getting Bitcoiners together, and you bring people in the same room, and you suddenly have so much deeper level of interaction and familiarity. And what I'm doing with the gallery on Timechain Calendar is kind of just assembling and bringing together all this art from different corners of the Bitcoin world. And there's a similar kind of like collective, um, really powerful thing happening there. I don't think, but we're just going to keep adding more. I'm sort of a pest. I keep bugging the people who have already participated, and I say, give me more pieces, because it's like, as you start to see the wider breadth of a particular artist's work, you come to understand them so much deeper. I went through this experience with Flo's artwork, where I just had one piece in there, and I had seen a couple other of her pieces in different places. But when I bring all that stuff together and you see it all in sequence by block height, there's something very kind of insightful and rewarding about seeing that scope. So part of me just thinks, there's some, really useful thing in just continuing to build out this gallery. I don't know that there's anywhere else where people can go and just discover new Bitcoin artists and see all this stuff together. So that's kind of part of the mission as it stands right now.
I love it, and I think you've nailed it there. What a good curator of a gallery does. And I'm not pretending I'm from the art world, because I'm definitely not from the streets of Wales, cobbled streets. But what a good curator does is tell a story, and I think that's what you're doing there on your site in on Timechain Calendar, is putting together this story of Bitcoin art, and not just the kind of overall narrative, but also the narrative of its its characters, and those characters being the artists, etc., and then the feelings and the emotions there. And you're right, you can kind of go through it, and you can and actually look at and see how an artist is developing, just in the same way that on the time chain calendar you can see how Bitcoin is developing as well. So there's kind of a really wholesome experience, and throughout this broadcast now, TC, I've had about 10 messages. You've seen them as well on the chat. We've got some like Mopar Mining has got like 3 or 4 screens of yours, of Time Chain Calendar going on. I think Rico Nakamoto's got it. There's lots of fans out there of this, and as you say, I think you've really hit on something here, something really special. Which way you? Because we've only got around. Well, we finished around about past. What, or approximately 7/10 of a block, I should say. But where do you see this going in the future? Where are you looking to take Time Chain Calendar? Is it just is it a bit chaotic in terms of predicting, just in the same way as predicting the block height, or have you got a plan kind of where you want it to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop a little hint. I've actually gotten my plan on a higher level very clear in the last 3 to 6 months. It's all kind of come together. I'm very clear exactly what I'm trying to build next. The gallery will continue to expand, but just as life hits, reality hits, I've been looking for how to turn this project into a business for a while, and how to sort of monetize so that I can feed my family and kind of live off of this project. And I have declined several sort of opportunities to take on advertisers on the website. I've declined sort of ideas that have come up that would kind of gamify maybe the interface a little more. I'm determined to keep the website as pure Signal as it can possibly be. And so what I'm doing next is I'm going to be building some new platforms. My next app is going to be on native, where you'll get it from the App Store or the Play Store, and you'll download it, and it'll have a service that I will humbly ask that people pay for on a subscription basis. That's my plan longer term. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to drop that before the end of this year. It's a very large project, a lot of miracles to achieve, so to speak, on my roadmap. But that's the plan. Is I'm going to be launching a different app where I'm going to try to monetize, and I'm going to keep timechaincalendar.com free, open, as pure a Signal as I can possibly keep it, and that's the plan currently.
Hey, that sounds like an amazing plan, and I can't wait to see what you're building next. And I wanted to give Marcus the mic because I think you have a question. Hey, Marcus, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I did get to meet TC. Obviously, we were chatting at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. That was great. And, one of the things that with Timechain having all these artists on it, what it reminds me of is this site that is still around, but it used to be much more popular, called Bitcoinity. And it's a price site where they have, the current price. But and I'm not even sure if they do this still or not, but what they used to do was if something was happening with the price, it would actually, like something exciting, they would expand the site down and showcase a GIF or some type of image, and consequently, it was on that site where was like one of the first places that I saw some of my artwork pop back up before people were really going wild with sharing it. And it was a neat intersection of, like, okay, here's a site that's giving me information about Bitcoin, but then, occasionally throwing in something that's, a little more fun or artistic or what have you. And it's it's kind of this intersection that it made me think of that a lot. But it's really great to see this come together of the idea of this time chain, and the artistic impression that you get on your site is really great. And I do think it's really cool that you have brought all these artists together into it as well. I'm happy to be on there, obviously, but I have a question in regards to time chain. Is that, do you do anything currently, if like in regards to current price, like with current price actions, if there's like drastic movement or anything, all-time high, is there anything that happens currently on time chain that's like above or beyond what it's looks like normally?
That's a good question. That question, slight side note, makes me think of some of Rebel's work, several other artists. I saw some really cool stuff in Nashville where people were making things that are reactive to price changes. I am just fascinated with any visualization that brings more information to the forefront. Like the Mask of Genesis piece by Rebel Money is just amazing, and it turns green when the price is going up and red when the price is going down, and that kind of thing. For Timechain Calendar, the price, as we call it, is taking a very sort of humble kind of backseat to all the other information. The upper right hand corner relative to the circles is where all the sort of price information is. I characterize it and contextualize it as exchange because I don't even really like the word price. But basically, I philosophically consider price to be outside of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin protocol has no awareness of dollars or euros or any exchange rates. The Bitcoin itself, in some ways, has no price. And it's almost like the price is outside of the protocol in that sense. That being said, I'm also well aware of the power of number go up and the importance of number go up to several participants, miners and traders and hodlers alike. People do care about that. And that's why it has a place on the app. But I don't currently do anything sort of extra and above to highlight the price. Not to say that that would never happen, but I don't know if you had Timechain Calendar up while we had this conversation. We hit several blocks. You can see I have a very obvious animation when a new block hits. These kind of things are the real emphasis of the app. And at the moment, the exchange rate is not prioritized in the same way. I do, however, have I think about 20 foreign currencies that you can actually change the exchange rate into depending on where you are in the world. If you want to see how many, millions of or billions of sats you get for a Nigerian naira or some of these other currencies, you can do that on the app. And maybe at some point I do actually put some features in that really play off of really milestone things, like obviously like the 100K, I think is something everyone's going to be watching for, and so that's something I might try to emphasize. But I hope you understand, like from my point of view, sort of as a mission statement of the project, the emphasis is really on the on-chain data, and price sits just outside.
I think it's great. Actually, I love the emphasis that you're giving to calling it exchange rather than price. I do particularly like that, and your reasoning is fantastic. So thanks.
Thank you, Marcus Connor. We really appreciate that. Every episode of the Art Freedom, if you join us, we do welcome anyone to come up on the mic. As I say, this is a community, not just the Rebel Flow and Co show. So every week, if you want to join us and come up on the mic, we really appreciate that. We have, however, come to the end of our hour here, and it's gone by so quickly. I believe, and you have to correct me on this, TC, but I think only 2 blocks have been mined in the last hour. So we've had our 2 blocks worth of conversation. Is that correct?
I think we had more than 2. I'm seeing maybe 3. But yeah, we're riding this wave, and right now we are dealing with a strong current, so to speak, as far as the block production. With that 10.5% difficulty increase last time, I expect those blocks to come in slower. That's Bitcoin working. If you see over on the sidebar, it says average block time under block production, and it's 10 minutes, 26 seconds. We're currently 74 blocks behind schedule. And that's expected when you get a double-digit difficulty increase. So again, this is the purpose of the Timechain Calendar, is to bring to your eyes all this information in a sort of glanceable, compact way. And if you do use it as a calendar, just check it each day. You're going to start noticing things. You're going to start picking up some really interesting insights. And I feel like that's really the whole purpose of my app. So I'm just thrilled that you guys had me on. I'm a big fan of the space. I'm a huge fan of both of you guys as artists, you too, Marcus, and so many others that are down there. This has been a pleasure, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
We'll be happy to have you, definitely have you back in the future. And anytime you would like to come on, you are more than welcome there, TC. So thank you very much for giving up your time this evening to come out here. And I think everyone's really enjoyed this space and the conversations that we have. Just before we head off, Flo, is your mic working, and do you have any other notes to add?
Hey, no, thank you so much for being here. As always, this has been so nice and amazing work. Thank you for what you do, and it's your place, it's your app, so it's very cool that you created it yourself. Some people have, I think, people struggle with that because of fiat art, to trust their own gut in what they like, what they don't like. You don't have to give an explanation for something you're building. It's for yourself. So, and also thank you so much for having me there. I really love what you're doing, and thank you everyone for being here with us and for joining, and I hope to see you guys next Monday. And yeah, stay ungovernable.
Have a wonderful week, guys. We are back with the one and only Gus Grilaska next week. We'll be talking about his art and his Freddie Mercury impression. So please join us next week. Same time, same place. Until then, go out and